After 17 years of working on Defenders in all sorts of environments, and after 9 years of ownership of this TD5, I'm going to share with you 15 hidden problems that you need to know about to prevent any sort of hidden repair bills in the future. If you own a TD5 or you own a Defender, you want to stick around until the end of the video to hear all these tips. It's not just specific to the TD5, there are some Land Rover generic tips in there as well. This bolt is famously known as the $1 million bolt. It's located in the oil pump, and Land Rover may or may not have put Loctite on it from manufacture. If they didn't put Loctite on it from manufacture, it can work its way loose over time, and obviously if it fails, it will starve the engine of oil, causing the engine to fail. This bolt is a bolt that I replaced 9 years ago when I first got my TD5, and I would always recommend, if you've got a TD5 and you do not know about this bolt, you've got to replace it. In my case, it did actually have Loctite on it, but the peace of mind of knowing there's a new bolt in it with really good Loctite on it is worth it in my opinion. And if you can see that on the camera, you see the yellow thread, that's got Loctite on it. But you just don't know, and that is one of my first hidden problems. The fuel pressure regulator located on the driver's side of the TD5 engine, you have to take off the actual acoustic cover first. It's located down here. This fuel pressure regulator can leak over time. Diesel isn't really a lubricant and it can perish O-rings over time, causing this regulator to fail. If it does fail, you'll notice a really strong smell of diesel, and also diesel dropping onto the actual air intake hose there, and possibly onto the floor depending how badly it's leaking. You'll also notice a reducing performance, possibly lumpy performance, and possibly a check engine light as well. So if you do have any of those symptoms, get down, take your acoustic cover off, have a sniff down there, have an inspection down here of the fuel pressure regulator. Mine has been replaced before because it was leaking diesel when I first got it. This next one is the injector harness. This is a serviceable part. Every 2 years it should be replaced. And the reason why it should be replaced is because it's not exactly a very good design. Land Rover put the injectors inside a very oily part of the engine, so they get perished in time, the seals and everything, so it causes the injectors not to function correctly. Common problems are check engine lights, lumpy performance, limp mode as well, and also hot start issues. So if you cold start your engine fine, you go to fill up somewhere and it won't start again, have a check at the injector harness, see when it's last been replaced. If it hasn't been replaced, definitely replace it. Now, to replace this injector harness, you need to obviously take off the actual engine cover here. These small bolts here, easy to take off, easy to replace. When you do refit it though, there are a few specialist tools you do need. You do need to put a few beads of silicone at the back of the engine to make sure it's not leaking. I believe it's called the half moon at the back of the engine there. You most definitely need a small torque wrench. This is a 3/8 torque wrench and it starts at 8 Newton meters. The torque setting for the bolts here, each bolt, and I would always do them in sort of staggering as well as sequence. I wouldn't just do them torque, 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 because it won't sit right. The torque setting for these bolts is only 10 Newton meters. Now, it doesn't matter how good of a mechanic you are, you cannot feel what 10 Newton meters is like because it is literally barely any torque. And from this book here, the Land Rover Service Guide, really handy to get. If you haven't got a TD5 and you haven't got one, check in the description below. There will be a link to it. I use it quite often. This is the last one I've done on this one, and you can see it sits like this, and here is the main loom that travels to the ECU, and obviously each injector for each cylinder as well, 5 cylinders. If you do ignore this, not only does it cause the issues what I've already stated, it does actually perish over time and causes oil to backfill into the actual loom and travel down the loom to the ECU, which brings us on handily to our next issue. Now, the next hidden issue on the TD5 brings us to the driver's side, underneath the driver's seat, and this is where the ECU sits. And this issue is directly caused by ignoring maintenance to the injector harness. So as I said in the previous tip what I give, the oil travels down the loom from the injector harness if it's not been maintained correctly over time, and it travels down the actual loom bizarrely enough. It's just a crazy scenario what the TD5 kind of gives. It travels all the way down the loom into the actual ECU, and we'll see. So this is easy to check if you do have oil in the ECU. You basically just take off the covers of the driver's seat, take them off, fold the acoustic back if you do have it fitted, and the reg plug down here, you just pinch it and then pop it off, and you'll basically see if there is any oil in the ECU, and if there is any oil in the ECU, it'll be very, very obvious. It'll be starting to leak out. It might even be saturated in oil as well. Now I believe this is only for the red plug, but there's no harm in checking the actual black plug as well, because it's not exactly difficult to take out, and you can just see if there's any oil. You can rub your hand across it as well to see if it is, see if there is any oil. And if there is any oil, then I would definitely recommend getting some good electrical cleaner, cleaning out that, and then cleaning the actual connection as well inside there to make sure there's no more oil left over, because the oil can actually travel inside the ECU and write the ECU off, giving you a bit of a repair bill. Not probably the end of the world, because you can probably get a salvage ECU nowadays relatively cheaply, but certainly not what you want to be doing. Now, the Land Rover Defender isn't exactly known for its sport-like gearbox, but it certainly shouldn't be crunchy or lumpy or never really ease off once it actually heats up and gets to operating temperature. So things like this, it needs replacing. Actually, by Land Rover, it states every 24,000 miles or every 2 years. I think that's maybe a little bit excessive. I would probably go for certainly the 24,000 miles, but I would probably go for the 3 years or the 4 years over that time. Now, I've already done mine before, and it does actually have a magnetic plug on the gearbox. Mine is actually due again relatively soon, because it's been about 3 years now since I've done it last. Now, the magnetic plug does collect shards of metal over time. This is what it's designed for. Things in engineering generally like that, they do have some form of magnetic plug. I know helicopters use them as well, and then they get changed very regularly, the actual oil on them. But the Land Rover, because it does have a magnetic plug, there are bits of swarf in a way what go around the actual gearbox and can cause damage over time and cause you lumpiness and cause you grinding gears and things like that. So if you do have a lumpy gearbox, it shouldn't be lumpy. It should be lumpy maybe when it's cold, but certainly when it's warmed up, it should be quite a tight little gearbox and it should feel quite nice. I would definitely recommend changing it and then monitor the actual magnetic plug as well. Mine, I will put it on screen if I can find it, wasn't actually too bad when it came out. I've seen them a lot worse than this, and if yours is really bad, I would definitely recommend changing it maybe before the interval, like I said, about 2 to 3 years, but I'd recommend maybe changing it every year, just for a few years as you go along with the actual engine service as well. And I think you will notice a difference over time when it actually settles in and gets all the actual swarf out of the gearbox as well. Staying on with the gearbox theme of the lumpiness, this is the clutch reservoir here, and it takes .4, same as the actual brake reservoir as well. Now, .4's got a life of somewhere between 2 to 3 years. It collects moisture over time, and you can actually get a moisture monitor for it as well, just to see how much moisture is in the brake fluid or not. Now, the clutch fluid as well, this is a really, really forgotten about fluid, but I would always recommend changing it every 2 to 3 years anyway, because I will guarantee you'll notice a difference in your clutch pedal if you change this for fresh .4. Now, obviously, to bleed it is down where the slave cylinder is. I got a pressure bleeder on this, pressurized it not that much because it is only a small system, didn't pressurize it as much as I would do the actual brake reservoir, but I pressurized it a little bit and I managed to get the slave cylinder bleeding nipple cracked off as well. Get all the fresh fluid and the .4 into it as well, and it definitely makes a massive difference in terms of clutch pedal and possibly improving the gear shifting as well. Next on the list, down the front of the vehicle, these are the swivel cups, and basically you're looking for pretty much exactly what's on mine. Now this is definitely due a hub rebuild at some point, definitely in the near future anyway, and you're looking for the actual seeping of oil on the hub as well. And you're also looking for pitting, so there's obviously pitting on this callus cup as well. And if there is pitting on it, it'll need replacing. You can't just rebuild the hub and hope for a seal on the new kit on the old pitted callus, because it will just leak again. But this is a really easy one to see, especially if you're looking to buy a Defender. You can just get under the front of it, have a look here. And if you're doing it yourself, it's a relatively expensive job, roughly about £200 to £300 for the kit. But if you are putting it into a garage to do it, you're probably looking at about £1,000 to do all this, because it's very labour intensive. You need to get the new bearings as well. You need to take all the hub off. You know, it's quite a labour intensive job. So it's definitely one to look out for if you are looking to buy, or if you do own one, and it's worth just planning in for it as well. And if you are looking for tips and tricks, I will be doing mine in the near future, so you can look out for that video when it comes. On to the coolant now. Now this housing here is very common. A leak point, it was leaking on mine. You can check out the video link now. Replacing this is relatively straightforward. It's just a little bit labour intensive, and I'll talk through the actual how to bleed it and things like that on the video, but you want to be looking for crystallization. There's still a little bit of crystallization there. It's like an old bit of crystallization. What was already on there. Since replacing it, it's not leaked at all. I've done about 1,500 miles now in it, and it's not leaked at all. The coolant hasn't gone down either, which is also good. Now to look at the coolant there, you can't actually see very well. I don't know if it's because mine's quite an old one or an old tank or anything like that, but it's not very easy to see, so you can just dip your finger in it and just see if you've got coolant on the end of your finger, because when it's cold level, normally a finger is about right. But obviously, overheating is the main issue. What you've got to be wary of losing coolant in the engine. But if you get your cover off every now and then, and you can just have a good look around and look for any sort of crystallization, especially around the actual joints where these Jubilee clips or where the clips actually sit, because that's where it's going to leak first. Splitting the hose, yeah, you can definitely get splits in the hose over time because rubber does perish over time. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to get leaking from your gaskets, leaking from your Jubilee clips, and leaking from your actual clips as well. So get a good look around all your hoses, get a good look around at the bottom of the engine as well, the bottom hose, and also on the heater matrix side as well. There's plenty of hoses on here, so you just got to get around them all and just have a good look around them all. This one's only really relevant for earlier TD5 models. This one's a 15p engine code, so before that it was like a 10p and a few other codes as well. So from about 99 to roughly 2001 is sort of where we're looking for, maybe some 2002 models as well. But if yours does sit in this kind of like age bracket, it's just something to be aware of. Now, Land Rover fit plastic dowels inside the engine of these earlier TD5 models, because obviously the TD5 is quite an agricultural engine and it vibrates quite a lot as well. So because of the vibration levels, it causes the plastic dowels to crack, which then in turn kind of offsets everything inside the engine, and this basically causes the head gasket to potentially go as well. So if the head gasket goes, it then kind of like, you get almost a runaway effect as well, because then it warps as well, so then it causes even more sort of damage. Things to look out for in these earlier TD5 models, because this is a very invasive procedure to actually retrofit the later steel dowels is what will fitted to this engine here, and that was Land Rover's fix, what they did to the later TD5 models. But if I had an old TD5, I honestly don't think I would do much about it, because like I said, you have to take off basically the entire head. And when you take off the head, you have to get it skimmed anyway. You can't just take off the head and expect to put a new head gasket on and it will be fine. But if you do end up having a head gasket failure, then things to look out for, obviously white smoke out of the exhaust, oil in the coolant and vice versa, coolant in the oil. Obviously, if it loses a lot of coolant, but you can't see anything leaking from anywhere of the hoses, what I spoke about, if it's leaking from the side of the engine as well, you can see the coolant coming out, crystallizing between the head and the top head, then you may have a problem with the head gasket. And obviously overheating as well is a main issue of a head gasket. But this is more of an FYI, I would say, for the earlier TD5 models. It's not something that I would particularly be worried about. It's just something to be aware of. If you do have to replace your head gasket, definitely get the steel dowels fitted as a retrofit when you're repairing the head. Now this next one, if you have any sort of sluggish performance, any kind of check engine light, or you can't really hear the turbo really spooling up, you may have an issue with the actual wastegate. Now on the TD5, it's quite common for the wastegate to get corroded. And if it gets corroded, it can't operate the actuator correctly. So if you've got a tin of WD-40, just give it a spray under there on the actual arm. Give it a spray on the front as well. Get a pair of mole grips on the actual rod. Grip it nice and tight. And it's quite a bit of effort to move. But if it moves like mine is there, it means the actuator is working correctly and the actual arm is free. Now it should be relatively hard to move. That's why you need some quite good strong mole grips. I've got Draper ones here. And they do grip on really tightly to the actual whatever I want to grip onto. But yeah, definitely get some WD-40, spray it underneath, spray it at the front as well, and just make sure this rod moves freely. If you have found any of these tips helpful so far, please do consider hitting that like button. It basically helps the channel reach a broader audience as well, so people who may also find these tips helpful just as you have. Also consider subscribing along. There's plenty more videos to come of TD5 and other car topics as well. Now on to the next tip. On the next one here, we're going to be looking at the MAF, the mass airflow meter. And if you have an issue with the MAF, you may have black smoke coming out of the exhaust, you may have underperformance, the turbo may not be boosting. You may have other issues such as check engine light as well, lumpy performance, intermittent performance, stuttering performance. There may be a whole host of issues just associated with this little piece of technology here. Now, when it comes to buying replacement parts, I'll admit I'm relatively cheap, but when it comes to buying a replacement MAF, I will only ever buy Bosch or genuine. So I remember replacing a BMW 325's MAF, what I used to own as a track car. I actually had to go to BMW to buy the MAF because I didn't trust anything on the actual market, things like the online marketplaces and things like that. I just didn't trust anything because you can buy cheap, but in this case, you will buy twice. I can guarantee it. So yeah, they may cost between £90 and £300, but in my opinion, a genuine MAF is worth it every day of the week. Now, to actually diagnose the MAF, you have to take it out for a drive. You get your diagnostics plugged into the ODB, and you're basically looking for airflow meter reading. And if it reads 0, it means you have an issue with the MAF. You can also take off this connection and test the voltage out. Obviously, turn the ignition on, don't turn the engine on. Turn the ignition on, have a look at the voltage, what's coming out of the actual loom here into the connector. So you know if you have the 12 volts here, you have got feed to the MAF. So you know it's not an issue with the actual loom itself. It could be an issue with the MAF. There are also cleaners out there, so you can obviously take off this and spray the actual MAF element. I've not really had much success using these before, but it's worth a try on your genuine MAF if you do think you have an issue with it before you do commit to replacing it, because a tin is only about £5 or £6, really not expensive. I'll link the description below in something what I would use personally rather than any sort of cheap material. Now the next one is the clutch itself. This may not be quite as obviously hidden as you may think, but there's a little bit more to it than just the clutch going wrong. Now on my one, it's a 2005, a late 2005. It's done about 80,000 miles, so it's still on its original clutch. And there are a few scenarios where I'm doing a really heavy hill start in first gear, and you do get the sort of judder, the clutch judder you'd call it. You can also get clutch slip as well, which is basically wear on the clutch. So you've got judder and slip, 2 clutch wears. But there's more to it on the TD5 than that, because the TD5 has a dual mass flywheel. This is to reduce the actual engine vibration, a little bit tongue in cheek, because the engine is really vibrating anyway. But it's to reduce engine vibration, and all modern cars pretty much have a dual mass flywheel. And there's a popular mod where people replace the clutch, they put a single mass flywheel on. Personally, when I do replace the clutch on this, it'll be for a heavier duty clutch than the original one. I would probably just replace the dual mass flywheel again, because the way I see it, the vehicle's got 80,000 miles out of its clutch so far. Maybe you'd expect a little bit more, maybe 120, something like that. But I've heard of clutches going between 40 and 60 on some cars. So you just sort of don't know. It's all down to driver habit, and does it tow loads? Has it got more power to it and things like that? This has been remapped in its past. So it was producing between 180 to 200 horsepower. So more strain on the clutch for sure. So obviously, if your clutch does need doing and you are going to replace a dual mass flywheel, there are a few other things what I would personally do while I'm down there. It's a very invasive procedure, replacing the clutch on one of these. You can either have to take the gearbox out or you take the engine out. I think I would take the engine out, because I don't have a ramp in my garage. I've got an engine crane, but I don't have a ramp. So it depends what you've got in your sort of arsenal of tools for Land Rovers. I mentioned that there's more to it than just replacing the dual mass flywheel in the clutch. I would also replace the rear shaft seal on the TD5. And this is basically the rear crankshaft. And this is a very invasive kind of procedure to do, but while you've got the flywheel off, it's not much more to do than that. You basically have to take the sump off, and then you take the sort of back cover of the engine off, and then you can get to the rear seal. Then you obviously have to drop the oil as well, because the sump's going to be full of oil. So do it when it's servicing and things like that, so you can tie it in with other things as well. And while you're there, you may as well do the oil pump bolt if you've not done it before. So a telltale sign that your rear crankshaft seal is leaking or failed or anything like that is between the engine and the gearbox, you get a tiny little drip of oil. Now on this one, I haven't seen it so far, but we can go underneath it and have a look. So here's the drain plug for the sump. You would usually get oil coming from here. So between the actual gearbox and the engine, you'd get oil leaking here. Just a little drip every now and then if your rear crankshaft seal's failed. Now the next one on the list is the actual hub seal itself. So you'll notice a sort of smell of really strong transmission oil. You'll also notice that it may get oil on the inside of the rim as well. It's kind of hard to see with alloy wheels. So if you have steel wheels, your hub will be exposed. So it's obviously not exposed here. It's got a cap over the actual hub here. But I think that this is leaking on the back. So I'm going to basically take the wheel off and I'll basically show you what to look for. So yeah, you can see here it's really sort of heavily soiled in oil. Looks like it's actually coming from the gasket itself, but you'll certainly get telltale signs of oil on the inside of the rim as well. You can see oil on the bottom of it, certainly oil down there as well. And also oil collecting inside the rim here. So you don't necessarily have to take the actual rim off, but to confirm it for sure, you always have to take the rim off. 17 mil. Got to get a little drip tray underneath the hub just in case it clatters out oil everywhere. Pair of circuit pliers, draper ones. Always put your finger here. So if you go like that instead of putting your finger there, if you go like that, it'll ping off and hit you in the face, I guarantee it. And it'll probably take your eye out. So you want to be doing that and just running it, pinching it out. See my finger there? Got my finger on it and it's not going anywhere now. You'll leave the bolts a little bit looser. A little persuasive device. Comes away. And you can see now it's starting to leak out a little bit. But the actual kind of hub there, it's not going to come off uncontrolled because I've got the bolts stopping it from doing that. Now you obviously don't know how bad it is until you actually get in here, so it looks like there's quite a lot of oil sitting in the actual kind of hub itself, so there's obviously quite a lot of oil come out as well. I think this will be an actual hub rebuild, so I don't have the parts at the minute, so I'm just going to put it back together and then get the parts ordered for it. That's everything back together now. Cleaned up the actual gasket, cleaned up the gasket face, replaced it with another paper gasket as a time being, and then obviously cleaned up everything. I just use a smear of grease just for the actual flange there, and then put the gasket on top of it, put the bolts in, bit of Loctite on them, 65 Newton meters as well on the torque wrench. And then we'll just see how it goes. I'll have to get the parts ordered for the whole hub rebuild. And obviously the front as well also needs doing. So I've got a little bit of work to do on this Land Rover to get it back up to really good standards. On to the next hidden issue. This is to do with the actual brakes itself. Now it's not so much a hidden issue, but it is because a lot of owners don't actually take the wheels off. So I would say every 2 years as a minimum, especially on really salty roads as well, you want to be taking the wheel off. You want to be having a look at your braking as well. You'll notice if you're braking in a straight line quite hard and it pulls anyway to the left or the right, you've got some imbalanced brakes somewhere, and that's caused by the pistons and these calipers sticking and not actually connecting with the actual disc itself. So I've got mine off and they look a little bit rusty because it's been a while since I've redone them all and re-greased them all. But you want to be having a look at them on the back here. You want to be taking off the actual split pins here. If you damage them, obviously get new ones. You want to be re-greasing them all as well. And you want to be operating the piston as well. So you just get a really big bar. Maybe not so much this, but you want to get a big bar and actually push the piston back in. To make sure it actually works as well. So there's 2 pistons on the back here. And there's 4 pistons on the front on my specific one. And that's each side as well. So you want to be getting each side. And also consider actually re-bleeding all the brakes as well every 2 to 3 years. And obviously the bleed nipples at the back here, they do tend to snap quite easily. So you want to be getting some WD-40 maybe the night before you're due to actually service the brakes. If they do snap, it's basically a new caliper needed. Unfortunately, I've had many over the years snap on me, but I always think, well, it's preventative maintenance for the braking system. If it's going to snap, it was going to snap anyway at some point. It was going to corrode anyway. So if it corrodes and the bleed nipple comes off, you lose your braking system effectively. So it's good to get in there, have a good strip down, get some more copper grease on these rods as well, get it all sort of looked at the back here, sanded down as well, filed down with the actual wire brush. And just basically a mini brake rebuild every few years, and that'll keep your braking straight and true. Well done for making it this far to the 15th tip. If you had made it this far to the 15th tip, it means you're really, really into Land Rovers, just like me. And if you're not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing, because there's plenty more videos like this of my Defender knowledge, what I'm going to be publishing within the next sort of like year as well. So I'm looking to get maybe one video every few weeks out. And not just Defenders, other car topics as well, whatever sort of takes my interest. So it's all very cliche, this last tip, and I wasn't going to put it in because I think the people who have subscribed to me are maybe a little bit bored of me saying about this tip. But for those who aren't subscribed, I'm going to have to put it in because I don't think you can have a hidden issue of Defenders without including it, and that's the chassis. It's so cliche to say a Defender's chassis rots. We all know it does, but at the end of the day, it's almost like a giant anode. It's got an aluminium body on a steel chassis, and it just corrodes itself until it, no longer exists. And that's why a lot of people galvanize chassis and chassis replacement, things like that. This is on its original chassis. It's had minimal welding done to it. It has actually had welding done to it before, but I think it's between like half an hour and an hour just on the back cross member. And that's the main culprit of not just the TD5, but also the 300 to 200, the Puma series as well, and that's the rear cross member. You get the delamination between the actual flanges as well, and that's the main issue there. On the front, we get, in terms of the outriggers as well, we get the sediment and sort of muck of the road and the salt sitting on top of the outrigger, and it corrodes into the actual aluminium body, as mine has up front. And also the sediment just sits there as well. So every so often when you clean the car, you want to be, especially in the winter, you want to be really getting under with the jet hose and the jet washer, getting that sort of foam underneath the Land Rover, getting the foam in the sort of the little holes of the chassis as well, and getting the power washer in there and really spraying it hard. And every sort of 6 months to a year, get the lano guard topped up on it, get the underseal topped up on it. And that'll just protect your investment effectively, because they're not an investment as such, but they don't really depreciate. So effectively, they can be classed as an investment as far as a car or the vehicle can be concerned with it anyway. So I'll put a link to my previous video of this tip as well, and it kind of shows a little bit more in depth of where to look for exactly in a chassis, just in the little nooks and the crevices as well. And a chassis can look really nice overall. I mean, obviously mine's completely clattered in underseal and things like that, and I do wash it quite heavily in the winter, so I really do try and maintain it as best as I can. But there are a few bits in my chassis that do have corrosion in it, and I have been actively taking it off and getting some really heavy coats of underseal in there as well. But they are my 15 tips in my ultimate guide to the TD5 and Land Rover Defender. If you have liked it, obviously please do hit the like button if you haven't already. And do consider subscribing as well, again, if you haven't already. And I'll see you for the next one.